Hey everyone, welcome to Behind the Message. My name is Eric Bramlett. I'm the Creative Arts Director here at Community, and I am joined by Dave Ferguson, our lead pastor. Dave, how you doing?
Doing good.
Good. We just were able to experience the message. It was the last week of our Created for Community series, and we talked a little bit about origin stories.
Yeah.
So how many years has Community actually been in existence?
Wow.
Where are we right now?
I don't know. So we started in 89. Do the math.
March of 89. So
That's 33?
33 years, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Holy smokes.
that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I was talking to somebody who is also on staff about, we were just kind of having small talk on a Sunday, and he had been here for 5 years, and we were just kind of talking about just the differences that you have and that you experience depending on how long you've been at a place. And, I've been here for 25 years.
Which is also a long time.
Which is also a really long time. And if I had 11 minutes, I would show you how long I've been here, because we have some footage that proves it.
Entertaining footage.
Very entertaining footage. It's really good stuff, and I'm very proud of it. But what I was saying to him was, kind of everyone has their start point, and that's how they think the place was and
Right.
is. It's like if you were here when we were already multi-site,
Yeah.
then you think of Community as a multi-site
Like it
church.
showed up that way.
Yeah, like it showed up that way.
Right.
And so like that's
Oh
how
my
you
goodness.
start. And so for me, when I first started at Community, we were already in Naperville North High School auditorium.
Yeah.
And we had 2 services, and then we were meeting at Quincy Avenue, which was like an industrial park, like during the week for offices, and then also like a midweek
stuff,
service.
yeah.
Midweek stuff. And so that's how I think of Community starting. Like that's how it started, is because that's what it was like when I first got here. And so, it's fascinating when you talked about origin stories. What do you think of when you think of like Community Christian Church? Like, do you go all the way back to 89? Do you go back to 88 when you're thinking about, being at the
Oh, no, I
breakfast
think
shop?
I'd probably go back to 88. Like in the talk, I talked about us, it was me and my college roommate, and John, his college roommate, meeting at a hen house restaurant. I think there's still a few of those around.
Wow.
But you don't want to go to them. Okay. Don't. And and then us just kind of going, hey, maybe we should do this, and kind of just scribbling out what would we do. Sidebar, to me the most fascinating part of that origin story, I guess, is that you got, 4 college friends, all in their early 20s, who are scratching out on the back of a napkin something that really we're still trying to accomplish.
Yeah. A cynical person might think, okay, you got those 3 words, but come on. You weren't really talking about that back then. It wasn't really on the napkin. Because we're talking about it right now.
And you know me,
yeah.
and some of you do. I'm not that cynical person. So no, the movement making, the third part, because if you watch the message, it's impact, reproducing, then movement making, threefold vision we scratched out. No, the impact part, we really thought that could happen. The reproducing part, and we were getting ready to plant a church, and we'd already kind of figured, hey, if you're going to start one, then why wouldn't you start lots of them, because you can make a greater impact. The movement-making piece, that seemed a little bit preposterous and arrogant, but we were bold enough to go, let's put it on there.
Yeah, and you're in a hen house or whatever. That's going to make anyone bold. It's going to make anyone arrogant.
Yes.
So talking about the reproducing thing, the multi-site phenomenon was not necessarily on the horizon. That wasn't anything that was in anyone's radar.
No, there was no such thing then.
What was the origin story for that? Just for a community to move from reproducing and applying multi-site to that part of the church's mission.
Well, again, one of the things we talk about in the message is how crucial small groups and reproducing small groups are. Well, actually, in one of those small groups, I tell the story about Troy becoming my apprentice. Within that small group, actually, there were a couple guys who were real estate developers. Mm-hmm. They both become Christ followers, and their spouses. We get a chance to baptize them. So they hadn't had much of any church experience, and so as real estate developers, they come to me and said, hey, this experience of community that we're having in these small groups, what if we got that in properties that we are developing across the Midwest. They had like 25 or 26 properties across the Midwest. And I kind of have a philosophy, I'll lead with a yes, even if you don't know what you're talking about, just go like, yeah, we should do that, and then figure it out later. Basically, then they came and said, hey, what if you just moved the whole church down to, it was like 2 towns south of Naperville. And I was like, I don't know if we can move the whole thing. And I don't know if it was them or me, but one of us came up with the idea, well, what if we just started a second location? And at that point, we'd never heard of any church going multi-site. And so they basically designed a community center and paid for it with our input. And that became the adventure where, okay, now we went from 1 location to 2 locations. And technically, actually, we didn't even have a location. We were renting the school, and then we actually had that space.
Yeah. What I'm so glad to hear you say is, and what I think is so important, when we think about what Community Christian Church is trying to accomplish, it comes down to small groups. When you talked
Always.
about those business types who experience community in a small group, and they said, I want to reproduce this in some of the places that we're building.
What was interesting is they saw that both as something that was a good thing for people to experience, but they also said, hey, if our people in our apartments can actually experience genuine community, it'll actually increase our retention rates. So it's not only good for people, but it's also good for business.
Yeah. Well, and these small groups, I mean, they do last a lifetime, even though, the goals of, starting new groups, they cause some shifts. You have to say goodbye to some people that you're used to seeing every week. And then, maybe you don't see them as often because they've started a new group. You talked about that with Troy, sending him, to Kansas City.
I mean, so it was just last month, Sue and I flew down to Florida, and we were down there, and then we hung out for a few days just with Troy and Janet. And I don't know if people get this, but essentially what you're talking about is making friends. You're making friends, and then you have Jesus like in the middle of it. And that makes it, because you can put a lot of stuff in the middle of relationships that make it pretty wacky or pretty dysfunctional, or even candidly could be bad or evil. But when you put Jesus in the middle of a group of friends, I mean, that is the real thing when it comes to community, and that's what you're talking about, and it lasts.
Yeah. So you did hit this hard in the talk, but I'm going to give you another shot at it. How important is this whole apprentice thing, like this concept of having an apprentice? Because, I mean, I can have a group of friends. Like, why do I need to have a leader and somebody who's, apprenticing that leader? Like, why is that such an important component of what makes a small group successful?
I mean, if the mission, and we've talked about this, is to make an impact, but then to be reproducing and movement making, what you experience with Gene and Joanne, what I experience with Troy and Janet, if we really want that for other people, then you have to have a mechanism for making that happen. And this, we're just talking about now at a leadership level.
Yeah.
And so you have someone who's like the 12 disciples who's like, hey, I think I could help create that kind of friendship community, that kind of small group. I'll go out and do that. And so that's what makes it so critical, is because you don't want that just for yourself. You want that for other people. And for those, folks who are now in your 40s and 50s and beyond too, I mean, you're going, oh, you know what? I also want that for my kids. And you know what? It doesn't happen unless you're intentional about that. And so that's why the challenge is so important. And I hope a whole bunch of you, in fact, I'll tell you what, we'll have Alec put the QR code and the text on there. So if you're interested.
I might have Zach do that, though.
Zach do that?
Well, I mean, I'm just saying.
Couldn't Zach make Alec do that?
Well, he could. I'm just worried about if the QR code works. That's all. Okay. I just want to make sure it works.
I stand corrected. Zach will do this.
That's a QR.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, guy doesn't know what a QR code is.
But anyway, so people can actually, here's an action step. Use the QR code or text the word apprentice to that number there, and you can get information about how to do this.
Yeah. No, it is super important. And going back to the concept of, well, I got here 6 months ago. I got here 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Wherever you start, you need a place for somebody to be able to get plugged in and to be able to start, functioning in a small group. And if the small groups don't grow, if they don't have a mechanism, like you said, to be able to allow new people to come in, then they won't.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then chances are, like we talked about last week, you're going to have a hard time connecting, and you're going to have a hard time when you're in your difficult times of life if you don't have that small group to be able to depend on.
Absolutely.
Well, good. I mean, I think it's hugely important, obviously, to be a part of this. How is your small group today? Like, what is your small group like right now? Like,
My Tuesday night small group, and we've probably most of us kind of been together for almost 2 years. This was the group that I would say, more than probably anybody else, these people got me through COVID, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of stuff online. One of the couples in our group actually was in Hawaii because they have a place in Hawaii, so they were like in Hawaii most of the time. But they were still
Yeah.
in our group every
Right.
week, and I mean, it was awesome. We did Christmas parties online, which was absurd. But I mean, when that's all you got, that's what you got.
Right.
And I'm super, super grateful for those people.
Oh, that's good. I love that. That's awesome. So if you've been watching this and you're not in a small group, we're going to put that QR code up again.
Who's doing that?
I think it's Zach, but I'd like to say that Alec is apprenticing Zach or he's apprenticing to learn how to do that. So I think there's a relationship there that
It's possible. We could,
yeah,
okay.
I think it's possible. But that's going to be up there for you to get involved, to get into a small group. If you have any other questions about all things community, of course, you can always head to communitychristian.info for more information and to figure out ways to take those next steps. Dave, thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So long, everybody.
Eric, thank you for filling in.
Oh, my pleasure.
My goodness, this was a last minute change due to some COVID fund, which you just never know when it's
Wait
gonna...
to thank me until after it's done.
That's true. I should
Yeah,
probably
because it
wait.
may not, get you
This
away.
may not be worth thanking you.